Let's write our configured ingredient class. Hello everyone, this is Ali Raza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. In previous episodes, we wrote many of our payload systems and the library is almost ready in the record section. In this video, we want to cover this configured ingredient. Now, this is one of the classes that was originally written by Turti and here is his repository. You can look into that. The class was named Industeria Ingredient after the mod ID of Industeria. Because we are converting it into a library, I had to change the name. I originally was planning to use J ingredient. That was a meaningless name, but you know that many of my classes started with J, so that was okay for me. However, I thought configured ingredient makes more sense as a name. Now, what is a configured ingredient? Basically, we know that when we have a recipe, we will use some ingredients. Now, a recipe contains of ingredients, the count of ingredients, and output, and the count of output. Now, we already covered the output because the output has an item, the count, and we even produced a chance variable for having our output. However, for the inputs, we can of course go with ingredient as item and count, but when we think about it, we can have a list of ingredients and then a list of stack data payload because now we have the count and we can add any components that we want into our recipe items. So this is the whole thing. This is a more advanced way of handling ingredients because you will see that Minecraft has an ingredient class. We will talk about it in this video, but it's not as advanced as we want to. So we go with registry entry list, and this is of type item. We call it entries. And then we have stack data payload as stack data. This is our record. Now, the very first thing is that we need a codec. Remember, I'm not using the name payload here because honestly, I think that configured ingredient is not suitable to be a payload. It's more about registering and then serializing and deserializing our custom recipe ingredient. Okay, let's see what the plugin gives us. Create the codec. Now, the plugin is using record codec builder.create. This time we don't want that. And because we are not using it, then the lambda is changed and actually the whole thing will be changed. So I will delete this part. Basically what we want is a public static final of a codec. Now this is codec.lazy initialize. Lazy initialize has no Java docs, unfortunately, but it returns a recursive codec. So basically when you want to register something that can work recursively, you will use lazy initialize. You go into the lambda, then we say the record codec builder dot create. We break the line. Now here we use inst lambda or instance or whatever, and we say that instance dot group, and we break the group again. Here we say ingredient from net Minecraft recipe dot entries codec dot field of for the. Now here is the thing. Let's open this ingredients because you may have a typo here. Let's see ingredients. We want this one. Okay, for the field ingredient with an s dot, actually after that dot, for getter the configured ingredients colon entries. Okay, comma. The second one will be stack data payload dot codec dot. Here we use optional field of. We want to return an optional. Now remember the field we called is component, but we want another thing inside the optional field of, and that is data with the default value of stack data payload dot empty. Now we convert it back for getter into the configured ingredients colon stack data. After this parenthesis, the one that we closed on the new line, we call apply on the instance and the configured ingredients colon new, and that is our codec. Now you may ask yourself, this is not the normal way we added the codec, and I'm not talking about the lazy initialized, I'm talking about these sections. We used ingredients because this is the name that we will put inside any serialized data like a JSON file, but we will convert it back to our entries, and here again we use another name compared to stack data and we call it data, and this one is optional. So if we don't have any components or the stack data is empty actually as the default value, the optional can handle that part. And again, we deserialize it back to our own payload. So that's our codec. Now we want a packet codec, and we say public static final packet codec of type registry byte buffer, comma configure ingredient. We call it packet codec equals to. Now remember, we separated our tuples into packet codec tuples. We say packet codec tuples dot tuple. The first param will be packet codecs dot registry entry list, and here we go for registry key of, actually registry keys dot item. After this entry, as the codec one, we go with configured features, configured ingredients, colon entries. Then we go with stack data payload dot packet codec, comma, configured ingredients, colon, stack data. And finally, we go with configured ingredients, colon, new. And we close this. Now, what we are having here is create method tuple in packet codec tuple. And I think I did, yeah, I messed it here. This is packet codec dot tuple, not my tuples, because these are only 4 and actually 1 extra. So yeah, it's the normal packet codec that uses T1, T2. My bad. Okay, now we want to have the empty configured ingredients. So we say public that returns configured ingredients. We call it empty equals to new, and let's make it static final. I forgot it. Public is static final. Configured ingredient empty equals to new configured ingredients. Then registry entry list dot of, and the of is empty, and then stack data payload dot empty, and this is our empty ingredients. Then we go for the constructors because we want to be able to construct in different ways. So we add a constructor. Let's see what we get. It's an empty one, but now we want a registry entry list of type item. We call it entries. Then instead of the stack data, we simply want a count as the integer. So we call this, we sent in the entries, but for the stack data, now it's called the create with the count. Then we will have another constructor. This one, we go with int count, then an item, unlimited parameters of items. We call this on the registry entry list of arrays.stream for the items. After first parenthesis, we call map. And here we say item, colon, get registry entry. After the first parenthesis again, we convert it back to list. And one extra parenthesis later, we say stack data payload.create from the count. Now you see that this guy is saying that it's deprecated. So because this one is deprecated, we want to suppress a warning. So we say suppress warnings deprecated, actually deprecation. And that will suppress this warning here. Then we have another constructor. In this one, we want to have a registry entry list of item. We call it entries. Then we want the count, and we want the component changes as components. So we will provide some components, but we want to separate the count from them. Here we call ourselves, we send in the entries, we say stack data dot create, and we use the second overload, so count and the components. Okay, now up until now we were dealing with a little bit of a complex record, nothing related to ingredients. However, any recipe should be able to check itself and see if the ingredients that we are providing are matching the stacks. So we want to check if we can match a stack, and for that we need to retrieve a list of items from our record. Because of that, we will have a public list of item stack, and we say get matching stacks. Here we return from this.entries, we stream on that, and then we say map any item, and we want to make a new item stack out of that item with this.count, actually the stack data.count and this.stack data.components. Finally, when we had everything, we want to convert this to list and return that. This method will convert every entry with the components that we have into a list of item stacks, returning item stacks for us. Again, when we are dealing with a recipe, we will provide some item stack in the interfaces of the game, and we want to compare if what we are providing is actually matching the recipe ingredient that we want to. So we will compare an item stack to this record to make sure that they match. This is the thing. Public that returns a boolean, we say test for recipe item stack, and we call it stack. Again, we return test, that is a method that we will write, stack with count less than or equals of stack dot get count. Now what is this count less than or equals is again a method that we will write ourselves in a few minutes. So test and this both are methods. Then we have a recipe comparison comparison that ignores the components. This one would compare the components because we just want the stack to be compared in every way. But now we want comparison that will ignore the components. So we say public that returns a Boolean test for recipe ignore components. Again, item stack, and here we say return this dot entries dot stream dot any match, and we want to send in any item into a lambda, and the lambda is that stack dot get item equals to item dot value, and this dot stack data dot count, not components, count is greater or equal to stack dot get count. So here we are ignoring the components, and from the components we only use the count. Now we have to use that test method. We have two overloads, actually three overloads for that. Public Boolean test. The first overload will accept an item stack, we call it stack, a Boolean, we call it match count, a Boolean, we call it match components. We return this dot entries dot stream dot any match item is used, and we say stack dot get item equals to item dot value, and now we have to check if not match count or stack dot get count equals to this dot stack data dot count. So either if we say not match count, that's okay, but if we are matching the count, we want to match the count, and then we have to put an and here. We say either not match components, or if we are matching components, then this dot stack data dot components dot equals stack dot get component changes. And this way, again, we make sure that we are properly handling the logic. Another overload is just using the stack. So I will copy this, I will paste it, but we are not using any booleans on the parameters. We say return test with the stack, and we default the values to true for the booleans. Another overload is, instead of using these booleans, we want a predicate of type integer, and we say count predicate. I will copy this whole thing, but we will change it. So we want to compare the items. We are not caring about these booleans, so they are gone. But here we say, instead of comparing that count directly, we say count predicate dot test the stack data dot count. Basically, what we did is that instead of directly sending in an integer for the count, we are saying that, hey, we have a predicate that we want to make sure that the count is greater or less than or anything, and please do the test yourself. Now we can make a few extra methods, but I'm not sure if I want to keep it here or not. I will add a mathUtil here. So a Java class, we call it mathUtil, and I will use that mathUtil in front of this guy, okay? Yeah. So in mathUtil, I will add this public static. This will return a predicate of integer, and we call it count equals with an integer count. All we are doing here, we return a comparison. So value goes into the value equals count. I will copy this, and of course, I can make it for the float and double. I will do it later, so I will put a to-do, add float and double overloads. Then I have a predicate integer that we say count less than, and of course, we want to make the value to be less than the number, okay? Let's change these because this is exactly against what we want. This is the count greater. Actually, I think that's correct because this is a predicate that we will use. So we say our count as the value is less than this number. So thankfully, number is not a keyword and we can use it. Actually, let's use value here. And instead of value, we use count here as the lambda. In my brain, this makes more sense. Okay, so the next one, I will copy this, I will paste it, and I say count less than or equal. So of course, it's less than or equal. Then I will copy these two. Instead of less than, it's greater than. So greater than, and this one is greater than or equal. So the count is greater and greater or equal. As I said, I will provide overloads for the float and double, and I will be back when I'm finished. Just remember that for the double and float, you will have to use the class wrappers. Okay, now back to our configured ingredients. And what is your there a problem? Less than or equal? I think I said equal. Yeah, equals. Okay, there we go. Let's close this. Let's close this. Come back here, and that's okay now. The next thing is again using the toDisplay because we want to make sure that we are able to show this ingredient inside the GUI. So public slot display toDisplay. Here we say if is empty. It's a method that we will add. Return slot display dot empty slot display dot instance. That's a singleton. If not, we return a new slot display, not this version, dot composite slot display, get matching stacks, then we stream on the matching stack, then we say dot map, we want the slot display dot stack slot display colon new dot map slot display dot class colon cast. Yeah, I've seen it before. Finally to list. At the end we close the parentheses. Now is empty is a public that returns a boolean is empty. All we are doing, we are comparing if this equals to the empty version. Simple as that. And basically that's it. So now I can close the video and call it finished. But I want to show you why did we add this class and not using the ingredient class itself from Minecraft. If you look into the ingredient, well, yes, we have packet codecs, we have a list of entries. We already added that. But if you look at the record definition itself, first of all, it's not record. It's a class and it implements some interfaces. But if you take a look at the parameters, it only accepts the entry list. So no counting, no extra components. And let's face it, if my recipe needs an item that has something on it, for example, an enchantment, then this way, using the ingredient on the vanilla code, we have to be a little bit cautious and do extra work on serialization, add our own serializer to convert the enchantment back to the code in the JSON and from JSON to the enchantment, and then do the comparisons manually ourselves. Lots of things. However, now we can provide any item with any component changes that we want. And that is the beauty of this one. And honestly, 3040 had done a great job of making this thing work. And we will see it in action actually when we go into machines. And using this is not that complicated compared to using the vanilla ingredients, because either way you have to produce items, but here we add few overloads for that, and instead of item alone we can use counts or any components as you see. So here's the thing, what if we don't want to produce the count? Let's add an overload. This is my addition to the 3040's code, and I don't want to add any count, and here I will use one. So by default, if we don't produce any count, it means that we will only use one item. Okay, in the next video we will come back and add few different things. Now here is something that 30 had done as a payload, and I'm not sure if I want to have it actually, because in my opinion it doesn't solve anything, and that is converting a block pose into 3 doubles. And this is a record of 3 doubles, double X, double Y, and double Z. Let me show you the code from 3040. As you see, this is package. All he's doing is having a record of 3 doubles. That implements the position source. So what he's doing is he's getting the position type from double position source, and he's getting the position in the word, again a vector 3, nothing fancy here. This is an internal class type. Well, he's making his own complex positioning data type. I don't know if I would use it at any time. If I will use something like that, or if I find any real use case of something like that, I will add this one to the library in future. Or if you want this, please inform me and I will add it to the library in future. Now in the next video we will come back and add few more utilities to the library. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and turn on that bell so that when I publish a new video, you will get informed. Have fun everyone. Bye.